From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Previously on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, in our weekly listener mail program, which informs a lot of our future episodes, we were contacted by our fellow conspiracy realist, Uncle Benny. And guys, I don't know if we all remember this, but it was late July of this year when Uncle Benny hipped us to one of the most bizarre UFO stories in modern history. With full disclosure, none of us have been to New Zealand. Is that correct?
No, but y'all have been practicing your Kiwi accents, and I can't wait to hear you roll them out and do like the Michael Caine off of Kiwi accents.
Well, I think it's going to come out accidentally as we're saying like names and places.
Accidentally?
Accidentally is how we pronounce that. Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I only just got the hang of Nar, like only barely. And that, do Kiwis say Nar as well? Or is that just exclusively Aussie?
I mean, it's a big country.
It's true. It's true.
I'm sure there's someone there.
A lot of sheep, apparently. A lot of sheep.
Yes. A lot of sheep.
And orcs. You got to watch out for them orcs.
Everything I know came from what we do in the shadows, Flight of the Conchords, TV. So
and Lord of the Rings? Come on. You're leaving out
they didn't have New Zealand accents.
That's true. It wasn't set in New Zealand like Baby Driver is set in Atlanta. You know?
Right. Although that would be great. Give us your headcanon. Give us your fandom of Lord of the Rings being New Zealand.
A remake with accents. Let's do it.
A remake entirely with accents, right?
Mm-hmm. And maybe some bits. We'll get to that. Sorry.
Bits and bats. Yeah. Watch out for the bits. So levels, folks, levels. We're doing levels tonight. We also want to, of course, as we're affectionately describing here, we want to point out that we do not have anything other than painfully American accents. When we may mispronounce or cartoonishly pronounce a thing, it is for comedic value. It is with great respect to our friends in New Zealand, especially our friends on New Zealand's South Island. So
dude, that was a mouthful, man. I could feel it rolling around in there. Well
yeah. Like an Anzac biscuit.
Exactly.
I'd love to do a quick shout out here to a TV show that I think we've mentioned once or twice before, because a lot of us know what we do in the shadows. A lot of us know Flight of the Conchords.
Right.
Not many of us, I think, know about Wellington Paranormal.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic show. And in this episode, we're headed to Wellington.
Mm-hmm. We're headed to Wellington. We also want to shout out our good friends at Auntie Donna.
The best. And can I also shout out a podcast that is kind of nerd culture stuff from some lovely dudes called The Weekly Planet. And they seem to be friends with the Auntie Donna guys. So if you like their shenanigans and you're into nerd culture stuff, highly recommend the Weekly Planet podcast.
And to be clear, our friends at Auntie Donna are Australian. We'll get into this, but let us shenan together, folks. Tonight's episode takes us on a journey through time and earthly space to the final days of December 1978 on New Zealand's South Island. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsors. Here are the facts. Let's start by kicking some geography, okay? So, since not everybody has a world map directly behind their monitor or directly in front of them while they're listening, New Zealand is not Australia. New Zealand is very close to Australia. It's often been called the Canada of Australia. And by often called, we mean specifically by us on this show.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Oh, okay.
Like, who's saying that? Them's fighting words.
Always have a specific source.
Yes, but also it is pretty far away. There's a whole sea in between, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like the Black Sea or some of the smaller seas out there. This is it's pretty much ocean, y'all. But it is close, right? But it's not so close that you can just take a quick flight over the way you can, in the UK and to a lot of other places in Europe.
It's remote, right? I mean, it certainly still feels that way, at least looking at it on the map.
And it has an outsized global impression on culture. It's also most famous for a lot of non-Aussie conspiracy realists or non-Kiwi conspiracy realists by being a place where the world's current billionaires are bunkering up. And so you may hear it mentioned often in that regard in shows of a similar milieu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at this place from above, right, to the southeast of mainland Australia there, you're going to see two primary large islands, essentially. I'm thinking a little bit of a comparison to Japan with the way it's set up there, perhaps. And we are talking, as you said, Ben, about the south of those two islands.
Yeah, by far the largest of the two islands. In fact, the South Island is technically the 12th largest island on the planet. And if you're looking at the map overhead, right, you're getting sat nav or something, this may not look Titanic from your perspective, but it's important to remember it's a big place. And for most of human history, it was very sparsely populated, but it's home to stunning geography and natural wonders. True story, folks. The South Island is home to something called the Southern Alps. That's how amazing the mountains are. That's why, to your earlier point, Noel, they filmed Lord of the Rings there.
It's lush.
You could get a bit of a sense of it from the map, but like of that mountain range, but it is not. It doesn't look like that. It looks like Lord of the Rings, as you said.
Especially because of the plains surrounding the mountains. That's why it becomes so majestic. Our story tonight takes place in a curious area called the Kaikōura Mountain Ranges. This is spelled Kaikōura. Again, we're not doing the accents unless it's for comedy. And it's these mountains are named after a small coastal town, also called Kaikōura. It's an interesting thing because the ranges here, the Kaikōura Ranges, are two parallel groups of mountains, and they're in the northeast of the South Island. They are so big because they're surrounded by plains, right, and rolling hills. They're so big that you can see them from the south of the smaller, much more populous North Island. And here we have a cameo from our pal James Cook, Captain James Cook, who originally, when he was one of the first,
the Captain Cook,
of the Captain Cook fame,
not to be confused with James Kirk. This is different. Right. This is an earthbound explorer,
and not to be confused with Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, which I just rewatched.
I was watching it last night too. It was the episode where they're kind of weighing whether or not to execute that guy, Crazy Eight.
What? Huh? Spoilers.
No, is that a spoiler? I didn't say whether they did it or not. I said they're weighing.
Guys, we've said it in the past.
It's just 20 years old at this point. Come on.
Is it? That show's old enough.
It's close to it. It has to be. I think we've reached the statute of limitations on spoilers.
Okay, well,
come at me, internet.
Here's the thing. We've discussed it on the show in the past. Breaking Bad is essentially car stuff, but with meth.
Yeah. Got to get that pseudo. Get
So
those Smurfs out getting that pseudo.
So this Captain Kirk
pseudo. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Captain
Kirk? Yeah,
Captain Cook. That's what I'm sorry. He puts the chili pea in the meth. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm all Breaking Bad coded right now.
So this has these pop culture references are hopefully valuable to someone. And thank you for tuning in. The thing is, the ranges themselves are still pretty rural. as of some of the most up-to-date information from the New Zealand census, there are a little less than 2,000 people living there day to day. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And these ranges are really important. Not many people there. There are two towns that we have to focus in on, Wellington and Christchurch.
Right.
Wellington is on the very southern tip of the more northern island, the smaller island.
Right.
A heavily populated place, lots of air traffic control going on there, lots of radar, lots of checking out what's going on.
And you may recognize the name Christchurch, which the same way that I did, it was the site of a really awful terrorist attack back in 2019 at 2 mosques. And it was a huge deal because it was a horrible situation, but also just things like that just don't happen there. And it's such a, rural, very, like you said, kind of, what's the word, idyllic kind of, place, part of the world, that it was just really shocking to hear about something like that coming out of a place like that.
But we're talking about 2 big cities. So Christchurch has a population of over 350,000 or so, and that makes it the 3rd largest city in the country. The first one is Auckland, and the second is, as we mentioned, Wellington. They have a lot of toys that are going to be important for tonight's exploration.
Exactly. And because they have a lot of toys and they're on that more populous island up there in the north, there are regular standard flights, huge cargo planes that travel from Wellington with a bunch of stuff to Christchurch, and they land, and then they turn around and they go back to Wellington. And Kaikōura, this mountain range we're talking about, is kind of smack dab in between these two. Christchurch, by the way, on that southern island past Kaikōura in this mountain range.
You have to traverse the mountains, right?
Yes.
You have to find the mountain pass.
Or essentially go right over the ocean there, right next to them.
Or skirt, yeah. So the issue here is that most locals, most New Zealand nationals know of these mountains to one degree or another, but they gain national attention on, I was thinking of the way to say it. Kaikōura mountain ranges, for a lot of people pre-1978 in New Zealand, they were like the Grand Canyon in the United States. They were a wonder you knew about, right? You might know about the Adirondacks, but you never visit, right? Because maybe you haven't had the time.
Yeah, because those chairs are mega uncomfortable. I mean,
right.
Why would you do that to yourself?
They're no Eames chairs, I agree. It's late in the evening, about 11 p.m. local time on December 20th, 1978, when a guy named Ian Uffendell of the New Zealand RAF, Royal Air Force, reports unusual lights in the sky. And he says, I can do the voice. He says, 3 objects. There's one big one. There are 2 smaller things, like orbs, little lighty boys, and they're making controlled movement, and they're flying in some sort of pattern together.
And this immediately, has credence to it, the way like the Tic Tac stories did, because of who it's coming from. It's not just some like crackpot, stargazing and seeing something weird in their telescope. It's like someone who is used to monitoring these types of situations and is absolutely qualified to say this is a little weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he adds they're not aircraft.
Well, yeah, at least they don't seem like it, right? And the craziest thing is that the person he's talking to when he is reporting this stuff is the person who's manning the radar. And that person is also seeing stuff out there. So it's not like some of those UFO sightings that we've heard about in the past where, hey, we're not getting anything on radar, but there are weird lights. There's something physically out there.
It's pinging on the radar. And this is when we fast forward to the part of the lore that may be most familiar, or the origin story that's most familiar to ufologists. It's December 21st, wee hours, 1978. A small crew is flying a cargo plane, an Argosy type of plane. And the company they're flying for is called Safe Air Limited. Weirdly enough, they're delivering crates of newspapers. And they're flying And they start clocking strange objects that seem to be bird-dogging their craft. And they say you can hear the clips from the pilot and the crew themselves where they're saying, look, they're calling ATC, air traffic control, and they're saying, look, there are things around us, these strange orbs in the sky. They're not uniform in size. One is as large as a house, and they are tracking us. And then they're disappearing. And then they're inexplicably appearing somewhere else minutes later. And they're saying these are glowing red or orange orbs. Some of them are pulsing like white beacons. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying there earlier, Noel. It's oddly not that unusual for isolated groups of people, even aviation experts, to witness aerial phenomena they can't immediately explain.
Yeah, but it is pretty striking that this is all occurring on the same night. All of this is happening. So we've got an officer at a base seeing something that he thinks are just planes. Oh, wait, those aren't just planes, but they are on radar. And then you've got actual human beings in a flight over these mountains seeing the stuff. Pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's one of the primary reasons. So there are three big reasons why the Kaikōura Lights are different from most reports. First, as you said, Matt, they're clocked by air traffic control. They're out of Wellington. The Argosy crew naturally calls in the event, and ATC is able to confirm something is there, which means something was material enough to ping on a radar. They show up on the aircraft radar as well.
Yeah, and you also have all of these human beings who saw all this stuff later gave interviews where they said directly into a camera and microphone exactly what they saw. So Ian Uffendell, John Cordy, the guy who was in the radar control room there in Wellington,
right. Sure.
the pilots,
Startup, yeah.
Vern Powell and Ian Peary, I think is how you say his name. They all will talk about it openly. It's not like this thing that everybody's nervous about, because we've seen that before as well, right? With UFO reports, people are nervous to talk about it, or they feel as though they might be shunned or looked at differently for seeing something like this and then saying it out loud. We don't see that happening with this case. We don't see a lot of the telltale things that make the more skeptically minded of us think, oh, well, this is probably a hoax, or this isn't real, or, the way those people are talking, it doesn't seem right. We're not seeing that here.
Yeah, and the second of these three things is that these lights eventually are sighted by hundreds of other people, not on the specific planes. And we're using the word planes as a plural on purpose because the third big thing that differentiates this event is that it is a series of events. There are multiple instances of these lights being observed over the next few days with all of the doodads we just mentioned. So maybe we get to
film cameras.
The second most famous sighting, which is December 30th, same year, just a few days later. It's almost 1979. There's an Australian television crew recording a similar event, also aboard a cargo aircraft. This one is flying between, you guessed it, folks, Wellington and Christchurch. This is where we introduce a three-person team: reporter Quentin Fogarty, a cameraman named David Crockett, and Nagar Crockett, the audio tech, who is also David Crockett's wife. They are literally on the plane because, get this, they're shooting B-roll for a TV show about the earlier sightings, and lo and behold, they witness their own Kaikōura Lights. At the time, this time, they're able to film on 60 millimeter from the plane in color. And this is again confirmed by Wellington Air Traffic Control. It's being observed by numerous witnesses. Do we want to play a clip of Fogarty talking about this?
I've been on the edge of my seat waiting for it.
Yeah, we have several clips here, and let's go ahead and cite the source. We found these on a YouTube channel called Marlborough Video Vault. The video is titled The Kaikōura UFOs -1978. And at least according to attribution on the description there, it was written and produced by Paul Davidson. So thank you, Paul, for doing this. The actual clips here are from 1978 there in late December. And this is nuts. So this first one, we're just going to hear from Quentin Fogarty, who is there. I've seen him cited as being a Channel 0 or Channel O reporter, but also for TV One, also News at 6.
Right,
so,
and changed their name a couple times over the decades as well.
Yeah, so to my understanding, it was recorded as part of a television news broadcast after they had heard of this original sighting.
On December 21st is the one the public knew about.
Yeah, the producer there, Leonard Lee, got permission to go up on one of these flights, on one of these Argosy flights. So let's jump to this. This is Quentin Fogarty just during the initial trip describing what they're seeing through the windows of the Argosy cockpit. Oh, this is one other piece of information we need to know. This is a cargo plane, so it's not like maybe a plane you've flown in where you've got windows all down the sides and stuff. This is, imagine just a big metal tube, and then you can see out the front of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So everything they're seeing is in the cockpit through the windows that the pilots are using to fly the plane.
In real time.
Yes. So here we go.
The very first thing we saw was these sort of balls of light that would just appear in the sky. And I mean, it was really just looking through small windows at a very, very black sky and seeing pulsating lights that started usually as a very, very small pinprick of light and then would glow into a great globe of light.
Now, that's so we originally said the real-time report, that is Fogarty looking back and recalling in an interview for a documentary we saw. But if you check out this thing, which is freely available anywhere you want to look online, you will see the lights that he is describing, and he appears to be describing those with accuracy.
Yeah, you can hear kind of in the moment him describing it, but it's just not as eloquent. It's just, he, as he even states in those later interviews, he's a bit flummoxed experiencing this whole thing and just trying to describe it in real time there, but he's just not doing a great job. There are several pieces of that you can hear, though.
Yeah. And here's the kicker, folks. Here's the badger in the bag. They land the plane, and we'll get into more of this as we continue. They land the plane, and in this instance, one of the objects, these inexplicable orbs, appears to follow the plane right up until it lands. And when they land, their camera guy is reloading his film, right? He's getting better film stock. We're working live. The plane takes off once more, and now it's followed by a, quote, orb-like object for another 15 minutes, also caught on film.
Oh, yeah. And we have one more clip, if you don't mind, guys, of that moment, because this is one of the actual film clips from 1978. It's the moment that they're in the radar room in Christchurch, and they're getting word from Wellington that the lights are still out there. And in this moment, you have to imagine what's going through the minds of, these pilots and this film crew. In this moment, they are kind of terrified because of this thing we have to mention here that happened very recently to the moment this is happening in December 1978. What happened to Frederick Valentik in October of 1978? And this has happened in Australia, so not very far from them, as we said, where a pilot, there's a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of rumors about this pilot that radioed in that he was seeing something that was metal and not an aircraft right before he disappeared. So these pilots were aware of this. This news crew was aware of this. And now they're up there seeing these lights and interacting with them. They imagined that perhaps they might meet the same fate that Frederick met, right? Just disappearing, plane and all.
Yeah, 1978. Check out our episode from 2023, The Disappearance of Frederick Valentik.
Absolutely. So here is a quick clip of that moment right before they took off for the second time.
We're now in the radar room at Christchurch Airport. It's about 1:45, and in about another 20 minutes, we intend to take off again in the Argosy and retrace the route we took only a few moments earlier. We've just heard from Wellington radar that there are still targets in the Kaikōura area. So this time we're hoping to get better film than we did last time and all I can say is we'll see what happens.
There we go. And so you can almost hear the nerves there. And it was such a harrowing experience that the sound recordist, Nagari Crockett, the wife of David Crockett, the cameraman, chose not to go back on the return flight.
Yeah, and again, they're a freelance team, not expecting this double tap. These are B-roll. They're there for B-roll and interviews, in situ in the moment. So we've got to applaud Crockett there for being the person who said, look, I'm here in a professional capacity and I don't want to be one of those suckers in the first act of a possible horror film. You know what I mean?
Can we also just acknowledge that it's badass that his name is Davy Crockett? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's more.
We were all thinking it. Okay.
More impressive to us, maybe.
Maybe so. Maybe so. He probably
Australia.
was a little sick of hearing about it.
Well, Dave noted that there's some weird stuff when they got off the plane the first time, where he states that the exterior of the plane seemed to be magnetized or energized in some way, and it just felt weird.
He says this after the fact.
He does say it after the fact, but he says he noted getting out of the plane and even was talking to his spouse at the time about how weird even the plane felt after experiencing that stuff.
Right. Was something too close to the craft. So from here, the case garners international attention, and the December 30th incident is really responding to a spate of multiple instances that have been reported on some level from the 21st to the 30th. The authorities feel they have to respond, and so the local police, the Carter Observatory out in Wellington, again, the town with all the toys, the Royal New Zealand Air Force, the Ministry of Defense, it's like our Department of Defense here, or excuse me, cough, cough, Department of War, cough, cough.
What is it good for?
And so they all get involved. And then this is in addition to scads of amateur ufologists, established scientific experts with a lot of bona fides in related fields. The New Zealand Air Force literally puts a Skyhawk on standby in case we need somebody to scoot for further sightings. And half a world away, our friends at the company are analyzing later reports from a Lockheed P-3 Orion, a real spoopy-doop ship that was sent to monitor the area. Those two things, the Skyhawk and the Orion, those occur away from the public eye. And right now, as we're recording, these lights, whatever they may be, they get sighted or reported every now and again in the years since, often toward the end of the year, with some reports being as recent as 2015. Makes you wonder. First question would be, is this due to a recurrent meteorological condition that happens around that time of year? Something like that?
Like a ghost lights type situation, or like swamp gas. Not that, but like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this news report went out to the public, so people got to see the actual filmed footage of UFOs in 1978 above this area. So you have to imagine that's increasing traffic, maybe, to look for things, more eyes on the skies, as it were.
It's priming interest.
It's priming interest, but it could also be priming perception.
100%.
It could be.
Same thing.
Right. And it also reminds me of the drone situation where we had Jersey, I believe, where there were drones sighted and or these weird lights sighted, and it was determined to be like an array of drones or whatever. But by virtue of all the reporting, more amateur dronists got their drones out there and just added to the situation, therefore upping the number of people sighting them. It's just like kind of a self-feeding system.
Yeah.
It's a social dynamic. It's related to, it's actually one of the primary reasons law enforcement never likes to say serial murderer unless it's unavoidable. So we have a mystery afoot here, or a sky, if you like.
I do.
Awesome. That worked out. We can keep that part then.
Awesome.
So there's, while there has been to date no material evidence recovered, or at least publicly disclosed, this case checks all of the other boxes for a good UFO instance. We have multiple occurrences. We have a contained region. We have multiple witnesses, some of whom are aviation or radar experts. We have electronic confirmation. You name it. We've got everything but the physical evidence. And so it must be no surprise that almost half a century after that initial December 20th, 1978 clocking, people around the world are still asking, what on or off Earth happened? Can we explain the Kaikōura Lights?
Maybe. We'll try. After a word from our sponsor.
Here's where it gets crazy.
God, I thought it was already crazy, Ben. I thought it's been crazy this whole time. Only just now?
It's where we get to the explanations.
Fair enough. I guess that's true. We have a format to uphold.
And so often we have a soul to uphold. So often
clearly.
the conspiracies are found in the attempts to cover up things, right? Not the original act. So, it depends upon whom you ask, if you want to be technical. We'll get to the official conclusions and why experts still question those, but maybe we spend some more time on the primary source information about the sightings, the first person to visibly clock those lights.
Yeah, that would be Bill Startup. That's his name. That's his name, Bill Startup. We got Davy Crockett and Bill Startup, old Billy Startup. But he was not a tech bro. In fact, when Bill and the crew first reported the lights, he was at a loss for what this thing might be. He did not have words to describe it, so he was left a bit flummoxed, much like the fellow in that clip we heard. And so he said, what it was, we do not know. That's all. I wish I knew.
He's one of the pilots along with Bob Gard.
Right.
Who was in the clip, though, Matt? Did we hear from this guy?
We have not heard from him.
We haven't heard from Bill Startup yet.
I didn't think so.
Bill Startup's the pilot who has to call this in and has to say, as you know, what it was, we don't know.
I had to say we do not know. It's so intense.
I wish I knew.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting to see those guys in interviews after a long time and recalling it and just saying, dang, I really wish we knew what the heck that was. That would be awesome if we knew what that was.
They're not pissed. They're professionals. They're not wingnuts. They are people trying to do their job. And when you are working in aviation, your least favorite thing is an unanswered question. That's the issue. Because if you know what a problem is, if you can identify what's happening, then you are on third base to the home run of figuring out how to fix it.
Right.
But if it's inexplicable, then you don't know which questions to begin asking. So let's go to John Cordy, briefly mentioned earlier. This is the radio operator out of Wellington on the first night of the sightings. And he had a bit of humor about the strange event because ATC guys are so cool, man. So stressed out, but you got to let stress roll off your back like water off a duck. So this guy says, we saw some little targets on our radar just down off of Blenheim, pardon my pronunciation, Cape Campbell Way, and we joked there was Father Christmas having a practice run with Rudolph in the front because it was just before Christmas. And I was like, oh, come on, man, you're cool.
Was it NORAD that always does the Santa sightings every Christmas for funsies?
Yeah. Live updates.
Santa up there having a laugh. Give me a break. That's amazing.
He continues in a more serious tone, too. After he does the Father Christmas bit, which, again, nice one, John, he says this target then moved toward the Argosy. Let's remember, that's our cargo plane carrying the newspaper crates. The target, quote, turned with it, the Argosy, then, quote, tracked it with it for a good 20 to 30 miles. The target and the aircraft were at 90 degrees to each other the whole time, and Vern Powell's aircraft said that they could see a big red light that was definitely airborne. And we got to hit that fact real quick. There was another aircraft that was close enough to observe this as well. So now we don't just have one group of people in the skies. We have two planes in the sky.
Yeah, Vern Powell and Ian Peary, they were the first plane that saw this. Those are the fellows, right? That were actually hanging out with John Cordy in the very beginning, having that communication. Then those other two officers, Startup and Guard, they are pilots when the news crew went up on the 30th.
And I think we have another quote, don't we?
Yeah, fast forward to the 30th. We mentioned that TV crew on the plane. We mentioned one of them, the journalist Quentin Fogarty, and he is like everybody else on the craft. He is watching in awe, bewilderment, and no small degree of helplessness as these lights are, and I keep using this term, guys, it's just perfect for it. The lights are bird dogging their craft, like Foo Fighters in World War II.
Totally. And we do have a quote from Fogarty where he says the word pinpricks, I think, again. And I'm sorry, guys, if I didn't clock the audio of that, because that to me is the classic test of a Kiwi accent. But here he says, on the flight down, I'm not going to do the voice as well, what we basically saw were pinpricks of light that turned into great globes of light. We did hear him talking about globes of light earlier, and they were airborne, and they were between us and the coast because we could see the coast, and we could see the sea, and we could see these things shining down. There's a lot of seas there.
And then we have another sound clip we'd like to play from you from, again, some of the footage we were referencing earlier.
Yeah, you can find this on the Kaikōura UFOs-1978, written and produced by Paul Davidson. Find it on YouTube. Here is a clip of these fellas. I think it's a couple different people describing what they were seeing on that return flight from Christchurch to Wellington.
They were brilliant white, silvery white starburst. Was unusual in that they were going vertically up and down at a rate that, in my view, precluded them from being anything that I've known about, like helicopters or whatever. I'm now looking over towards the right of the aircraft, and we have an object confirmed by Wellington radar. It's been following us for quite a while. It's about 4 miles away, and it looks like a very faint star, but then emits a very bright white and green light. I must admit, this is just a little bit frightening.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, we're hearing different instances of people reporting very similar experiences.
Yeah, the first voice you heard was Bob Guard, who's one of the pilots on that flight. And then you hear Quentin Fogarty replying with exactly what he's seeing, doing the reporter in situ thing.
Mm-hmm. And so now we have people with firsthand experience speaking with specific knowledge and specific description of what they witnessed. The witnesses here all report seeing similar things. They're not changing nor really embellishing their stories. And it doesn't sound like they had time to work together, right, and hatch some sort of universal narrative. They all are saying they're large, brightly lit things that are moving at high speeds, that are making sudden turns, which would be impossible for physical human-made craft at the time.
Tic-tac type stuff. Like they're behaving in ways that science cannot fully explain. The speed with which they go from the water to the air and this, the speed, the way they're maneuvering. Exactly.
Or they appear to. They're explained from their perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
It should be noted that many of the witnesses saw one larger bright light and then several, at least two smaller lights.
Yes.
That they're seeing at the same time. And those three lights would come together, and sometimes they would shoot off into different directions and then return back together. Very strange.
That's Close Encounters type vibes, or like that's the way we've seen UFOs depicted. I think there was an episode of the X-Files too, where there were those kids that were kind of spying on the site where there were these like spinny light things kind of moving around, and then I forget exactly how that episode went. But
well, the idea too is we're telling you the most consistent stuff, so the number does change based on the eyewitness accounts. We're not even counting the hundreds of folks on the ground who confirm sightings, multiple sightings around the same time. It's definitely not counting the I can't believe I wrote that. It's not counting the countless other folks, including experts, who later analyzed the film footage from the plane, from the ground, especially after so many people are primed to expect this, right? Are turning their eyes to the night sky and wondering if they too will see something incomprehensible. So riddle us this: what do the authorities say after it gets past a certain threshold of attention? You, as the government, do have to make some kind of response, even if you just say, "Nah, it's a windy house, no ghost here."
Yeah, you saw what your eyes thought were a UFO, but really it was an illusion, Michael.
Mm-hmm. David blamed him. Yeah, David blamed them because the Ministry of Defense publicly initially said, hey, these sightings are merely optical illusions, perhaps the result of atmospheric phenomena. How many of you are meteorologists? Bump, bump, bump. But witnesses who were involved, especially our primary aviators, our protagonists of the story, they're not having it. They feel, if we're being honest, they feel there's an attempt at gaslighting, and they're professionally offended.
Yes.
They should be.
Well, somebody came over and said, "You've forgotten about the radar, you
Mm-hmm.
Slap.
Exactly. I mean, Startup in particular, I just love the name.
It's so good.
Startup in particular went on record, and you can hear him, we're jumping around time a little bit, but you can hear him listing out various proposed explanations. He's like, oh, they said it was Venus. They said it was Jupiter. They said it was harbor lights or squid boats. But I saw these lights doing like 140 knots, and harbor lights don't do that.
usually."
They're stationary if they're built the way they're supposed to be built.
Oh, and that explanation in particular, calling out other planetary bodies, that's something that came into play with Frederick Valentik over in Australia. Mm-hmm. The primary explanations of that early on were that he got really confused when he saw some of the planet lights. He thought they were following him, and then he put his plane into basically a downward spiral as he's watching these lights that are now reflected off the ocean. But come on. That just seems, I mean, I get it that people are looking, in this instance, the MOD, Ministry of Defense, whoever that's looking at this stuff is trying to find an explanation that makes sense, right? It doesn't have to be anything weird, guys. It could be this. But It just seems so insulting to anybody who can fly a plane like that.
Right. And again, if you listen to our episode on Valentik, you will see similar proposed explanations for what occurred in that tragedy. His body is yet to be recovered, by the way, here in 2025 as we record.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was the exact same explanations given just a couple of months before this thing went down.
Yeah. And the idea here is a battle of narratives, perhaps. Again, please do check out that episode on Valentik. I agree. There's a eerie parallel, which makes this worth a re-listen. We also know that as we're going to learn after our break here, the official initial conclusion of the Ministry of Defense was not entirely true. Very Emily Dickinson style, tell the truth, but tell it slant. Because you see, the whole time they were saying this to the public, New Zealand and a few other friend groups, were intensely interested in figuring out what the heck was going on. And so, away from the press, they launched that inquiry we mentioned earlier. We'll take a break for a word from our sponsors and tell you what they found. And we're back. First theory, squid boats. All right, just the bubble here real quick, because I don't know about you guys. I was really excited and then very downtrodden when I learned that they did not mean squids piloting squid-made craft.
I know. I was thinking that too. It was a fun image. It's okay though.
That's a cool
We'll
image.
always have that moment where we
parallel
thought about squid
We'll
boats.
always have that moment.
But hey, squid boats are cool though.
Sure. Yeah. They're a big part of the maritime economy. There's that. Oh my gosh. We're trying to be cool dads. All right. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about why they thought maybe that was it.
Of course. Yeah.
Squid boats use big old lights. shining down into the water to try and attract squid. So you can imagine that if there's some kind of reflection in glass, if there's some kind, that's usually one of the proposals, right?
Right.
A pilot sees light that's actually on the water reflecting off their glass, and it appears to be moving around if the plane changes course in any way. It's like, oh, wow, it's moving across my screen there.
Or reflecting off cloud cover.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This is a thing that I do with my cats. You know, you take a shiny mirror and reflect light, and they chase the image of the light the way they chase a red dot or something like that. So the explanation is similar there, and we can see why that would be offensive to some professional aviators. And the other thing, okay, so this inquiry doesn't end in a specific ironclad conclusion. It ends in something like a pitch meeting. So they say, oh, you don't like the squid boat? Explanation? Well, what about this? What if they're like unburned meteors?
Right. Now
Right.
we're getting somewhere, because that would clock radar, right?
Right.
Unlike the squid boat reflection, you don't get
Right.
radar from that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there was a meteor shower around that
Yes.
time in that
Sure.
area.
Yeah, okay, sure. Big swing.
Getting closer.
As far as explanations go. And then they said something, very similar to the squid boat idea. They said this could have been lights from trains or other earthly vehicles, atmospheric shenanigans, cloud physics.
We're going further away again.
You guys know about planes, but how much do you know about astrophysics, huh? All right.
Cold.
All right. And then they said, or what if it was light from planets like Venus and Jupiter? And at this point, the pilots are going, I hate you guys. Why are you like this? Why are you doing this?
Can't it just be we saw something crazy that we don't know about yet?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which would be the Occam's razor of it. Governmental institutions generally do not like admitting they cannot explain a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So by this point, there's the mass of the public, the hoi polloi, right? The vox populi. The Kaikōura Lights have become a cultural phenomenon. So from the 1980s, sorry, I'm dating myself, the 1980s to now, even the most skeptical of locals in Kiwi communities will occasionally look up into the night sky around December, and they'll say, hey, maybe it'll happen again. Maybe I'll see some UFOs visit at the end of the earthly year. Before we go, though, we do have to give a shout out to, of course, various researchers who have analyzed the footage. Countless people have done this. You can see it all over the internet. One of the most prominent is a MUFON guy, scientist named Dr. Bruce Maccabee.
That's right. Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an American scientist and ufologist with an MS and PhD in physics. Got some bona fides there. Who's also, just, as a little bonus, an optical data processing expert. He concluded that the footage had captured the images and movements of the genuine article, a UFO.
Yeah. And we've got quotes from him. You can, again, read these or see them in various documentaries. He notes some of the same stuff we're saying, that a big differentiator here is that radar plays a role in these sightings. So unlike here's what you get often. You will often get UFO reports that are radar only. Right? So there's an ATC somewhere, or there's a totally legitimate thing abroad for some reason that gets a little pew, pew, pew on its radar, and there's no eyewitness accounts because it happens in a place where people don't usually hang out.
Yes. And you know who has really good radar technology? Militaries. So it's often a military that goes, hey, what the heck is that over there? As in the instance in 1953 with Felix Monclaw, where there was a radar blip in an area where there shouldn't be a radar blip because it's controlled airspace. So you send out a pilot to go check out what's going on. And in Felix's case, he and his plane disappeared. But that's beside the point. The whole point is the radar sightings occur a crazy number of times that we will never hear about.
Right. Because they're internal, and as a result, they're something that would maybe not be helpful to report to the public, because in doing so, you're revealing your surveillance capability, your collection methods, all your fun stuff. Going back to Maccabee, the next thing he reports is that it is more interesting to see. So we've got two things, right? Radar only identification, often internal for governments. And then we've got visual only identification, often associated with civilians or non-aviation experts. And when they are reporting something, there's often not a lot of instrumentation. We're not dismissing it. We're just saying there's often not a lot of instrumentation that would confirm what they were saying happened at that time. So this means that we've got a golden goose here. We've got a Venn diagram of a radar visual case. Witnesses are reporting something going in the same direction, obeying the same dynamics, the same trajectory and path as a target identified or a thing identified on radar. This is winning the lottery twice.
Yeah, man. Because that's why this one is so exciting. So then you've got this amazing person, Maccabee, who's looking at the film footage that this camera person, Davy Crockett, Dave, he saw and filmed, again, with a handheld film camera in a cockpit that's, in an airplane that's in flight. And
Wait, are you serious?
Yes.
Like a 16 millimeter?
Yes,
kind of
yes, a 16 millimeter.
That's insane.
So imagine the heft and weight of this huge film canister above the lens, and he's
imagine the vibration as well on the blade.
Yes, and he's leaning over people and through instrumentation to try and get footage.
Heck?
And when you look at the footage, it looks like that. What you're imagining. Crazy, jumpy. You do see objects as he's trying to gain focus in the black sky with a tiny little thing.
Well, when you're bouncing around like that and you're filming items that are way off on the horizon, you're going to get all kinds of wild movements.
Ziggies and zaggies. Yeah.
So that's why it's massively important and incredible that we have the words here of Mr. Maccabee, who is a specialist in checking out that kind of stuff, knowing, okay, is that a lensing effect? Is that the movement of the camera? Is that the actual shape of the object, or is it out of focus? He's looking at all of this stuff. And he continues with a quote saying,
"These New Zealand sightings may be the most quote unquote instrumented," we'll have to unpack that, "in civilian ufology, with multiple witnesses, 2 independent tape recordings made during the sightings, color movie film, and ground and air radar." I guess he's just referring to like all of the cross-check kind of parallels and verifiable data points.
Objective, non-qualitative confirmation
that line up, and that there's like a timeline that can be confirmed for. That is a big deal. I'm shocked, guys, that I'd not heard of this outside of this discussion. Seems like it would be a bigger deal.
The radar has one opinion. Yes, this is here, or no, this is not. The radar is not going to give you some sort of laborious interview process about how it felt when it clocked a thing going from A to Z.
Exactly.
And
frankly, I mean, the reports from these guys are pretty dispassionate too. We're not seeing a whole lot of like hyperbolic kind of talk. They seem real steadfast in their, reporting their observations.
Got to keep it together.
Yep.
Crying is for when you land.
Yeah. Well, and you see a real desire to know what the heck happened. In later interviews, several of the pilots were approached by Maccabee with, his findings after he analyzed the footage. And these pilots had given initial estimates of like how large they think the object is in the moment, how far away they think it is, and how fast it's traveling. One of the pilots comes forward and says Maccabee told him that the object was around 5 miles away from your plane, and it was probably as big as a 2-story building after he's analyzed the optics, which, again, you have to take an expert's, viewpoint and say, okay, well, that expert knows what they're talking about, knows what they're seeing. You also are taking into account the pilot's vision and their estimates based on knowledge and wisdom. But at the same time, it does make you realize in the moment when a human being, any of us, is experiencing something like this, we're trusting our eyes and our ears and all of our senses, but they may be a little off, right? And you may also remember it a little off. But having a piece of footage and that radar like that, let somebody even out of space and time observe it and say, oh my God, I think it was this because of, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we also, as we mentioned, with his bona fides, Dr. Maccabee was a career-long member and champion of MUFON, so that might put some folks in the crowd automatically off. But we can tell you his findings, and he wrote a ton of stuff, by the way, not just about this, but about other dodgy cases of UFO observations. And he was publicly ignored by the government of New Zealand. So you could say, hey, this is a cultural moment, like Mothman out in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. You could say that, except that in 2010, the New Zealand military released a treasure trove, their own Project Blue Book, really, a treasure trove of previously classified reports that dated from 2009 all the way back to 1954, which means it naturally includes the Kaikōura Lights. And it was released due to the Official Records Act, which is sort of the New Zealand version of FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. It's heavily redacted. Everybody got a deal on black highlighters, right, when they made these laws, so that you won't see a lot of specific names or other sensitive material. But we're talking 2,000 pages of documents, most of which involves weird stuff in the sky, weird lights in the sky. And we found a funny moment from just prior to the release of this, from the Royal Air Force themselves, and they were trying to get in front of it so hard. Can we do the quote?
Air Force Squadron Leader Kave Tamariki said the Defense Force did not have the resources to investigate UFO sightings and would not be commenting on the file's contents.
Mic drop.
Come on.
Get out of here with that noise.
That's I hate when people do that, right? Like, hey, I'm going to tell you something, and that's it. And no more questions. So speaking to the Dominion Post, Tamariki notes, quote, this is understandable. All right, I'm being a jerk. This is understandable. Quote, we've just been a collection point for the information. We don't investigate or make reports. We haven't substantiated anything in them.
But here you go.
But here it is. So we're not in charge of this. We have no comment. But you asked and we complied. You can see why they wanted to get in front of it. The documents have a lot of wild stuff. Again, none of which is co-signed by the Air Force. Alleged examples of alien writing, drawings of flying saucers.
Okay.
And then here's one for the Stargate fans in the crowd. In-depth descriptions of extraterrestrials wearing pharaoh mask.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
That's amazing. It's a good story. And so from what the Air Force is telling us here, for decades, they got these reports and then they just put them here. Let me get one. They put them in a file folder. You know what I mean? I'm holding up a file folder. All right. That one's about cattle. So
Sure.
So any agency, of course, is going to take pains to say, look, we just got what came in because we drew the short straw, right? And we didn't verify anything. But they also spend a lot of time in these documents on Kaikōura specifically. The evidence gives lie to the original story, guys. The original story is that New Zealand said, stop panicking over weather phenomena. The real story is that internally, they lost their bag over this. They launched this inquiry because they were concerned. And I love the point of context we're bringing up here. It's still Cold War, right? They're concerned that there might be some vaguely described intruders. They don't define the intruders. They just say intruders. Sort of like when your dog barks, it just says stranger.
Anytime someone comes into my house, whether it's my kid or a friend, I just go, intruder, show yourself. That's just.
Do you really?
I do. It's sort of a bit. It's a joke. I mean, it's just for fun.
That's why I'm so paranoid, man.
Exactly.
We used to hang out. I would get in front of your house and then text you to let you know I was there before I touched the door.
At least I didn't have one of those like paint cannon things. What do you remember those security cameras that would like pelt like intruders with paintballs?
That's kind of cool.
No, we talked about it. It was a really bad idea. It was like some strange news thing we talked about a while back.
Cool idea. Well, depending on which side of the door you're on.
100%.
Yeah. So the inquiry here does make some, again, they end with a bunch of pitches like, well, maybe it's blah, 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 or maybe it's blah, 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 or have you thought about blah, blah, blah. But their inquiry reaches one interesting thing. They eventually say, okay, we'll play if then. So the if then game. If the objects did exist, and if the multiple observations of those objects are correct, if they are accurate, then those objects logically have to be traveling at around 10,800 miles per hour, which for anybody playing along at home is pretty fast.
Yes, maybe too fast for a lot of the stuff. We were going to bring in stuff about drone technology that we talked about that was in full effect in the 80s, and there have been tests on like radio-controlled drone-like things since World War II. So like there's all kinds of weird stuff that could be up there that maybe some other government's operating and testing. Sure would be weird to be testing it that close to New Zealand if you're another country. But,
I don't know. I mean, if it's Cold War, right, and it's the Allies against the Axis, yeah.
Just thinking, 1978 is like high time there for some of that stuff.
Maybe it takes a village. Yeah, later, Noel's friends at the company, the CIA, will. Do you like how I just threw you under the bus there?
I love being it. That's where I like to live. Is under the bus.
They analyzed this stuff on their own, and they said, similar to what Dr. Maccabee said, who I suspect may have had some conversations. They said the, quote, large amount of documentary evidence includes the recollection of 7 witnesses, 2 tape recordings made during the sightings, the detection of some unusual ground and airplane radar targets, and a 16 millimeter color movie. So while they reached similar conclusions to those of New Zealand, the case is still out there. There's a curious wrinkle because we're telling you about this now declassified report as of 2010, right? Or anthology of reports. But the documents, the original documents that those reports are based on, are currently sealed up, still classified in New Zealand's National Archive. Unless something changes, some of these original reports are not going to be released until 2080. Are we still going to be making the show in 2080? Guys, what are we? What's our situation?
Who are we, man? What is this?
What even are we? Yeah.
Well, we've got less than 2,000 days until the singularity, according to some. So, we'll see what happens there.
Again, whenever we say some, we mean according to us from an earlier episode of our show. Canada. New Zealand. That's us. Yeah.
All those billionaires hanging out on New Zealand might get a real close encounter. We'll see what happens with all of that stuff. I do want to point really quickly just to that original broadcast that happened in 1978. I couldn't find an actual clip of that, a recording or an archived version of that. Did you guys locate that anywhere? Just a full stop. This is the whole thing in one video.
It's been, you can find clips of it in larger things. I think that's what we both found.
We are looking for the original one. We're not sure if it is titled UFO, The Closest Encounter, if that was the original broadcast or if that was like a rebroadcast, right? As we talked about, this footage was shown many, many a time. If you can gain access to that or you find it, please send it our way. We'll tell you how to contact us in a minute, but we want to see the full thing.
Yeah, and for now, we'd love to ask for some help from our Kiwi conspiracy realist. spelled with K's. Do people in your neck of the global woods still think of the Kaikōura Lights? How do people typically explain it? Is there anybody on the South Island who, pops open some wine or gets a coffee as December waxes on and spends some time looking at the night sky? Why are certain things still classified? Was there at least some point stuff New Zealand didn't want you to know? We can't wait to hear your thoughts. You can always send us an email, especially if you want a random fact. You can call us on a telephone. You can find us on the lines.
Do find us in all of those places. First and foremost, not necessarily foremost, but first at least, on the lines at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA, Twitter, and on YouTube, with video content galore for you to peruse and hopefully enjoy. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Yes. One tiny little piece of information we forgot to add into this thing. There was a moment when these pilots with the journalists were flying and they're attempting to capture these lights. There's a moment when Wellington Radar told them, hey guys, just heads up. One of the lights, one of the objects is immediately behind you now, so you can't physically see it. And it's doubled in size. So, get home safe.
Do with that information what you will. Yeah.
Just imagine. Call us and tell us how you would feel in that moment. That would be amazing. Call 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, it's a voicemail system. You've got 3 minutes. Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you want to send us an email, you can do that. We are
the entities that read each piece of correspondence we receive. Before we get to the rest of that, we have talked about the official inquiry. Some of those documents, if you'd like to read more on your own, you can find by emailing us directly. We'll give you the link, which is awkward to just announce on the air because it's government stuff. But if you yourself want to engage with the Official Information Act request of New Zealand, just go to fyi.org.nz, and while you're online, hit us up for a random fact here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.